Have you ever looked at a really tough problem, maybe something in your community, like multiple issues all tangled up?
Yeah, like health, environment, the economy, all hitting at once.
Exactly. And you just feel like, okay, no single expert has the whole picture here.
It's that feeling, right? That complexity.
Well, that feeling is exactly why we need to talk about something called interdisciplinarity.
It does sound a bit academic, maybe, a bit jargony.
It can, yeah.
Yeah.
But honestly, for navigating our world today, it's kind of a game changer. It's all about how knowledge gets organized, created, used.
How things connect or don't connect.
Precisely. So today, we're doing a deep dive into a really helpful framework. It's Julie Thompson Klein's Taxonomy of Interdisciplinarity.
A taxonomy, okay, a classification system.
Yeah, and our mission here is basically to unpack it, cut through the jargon, look at the different types, why they happen.
And give you a shortcut, really, to understanding how knowledge works together in practice.
Think of it like getting X-ray vision into collaboration.
And you need that vision because understanding these differences helps us see how we might actually tackle those huge, messy problems we started with.
Climate change, public health.
Technological shifts, you name it. Finding good solutions, innovating. It really demands disciplines working together effectively.
So this isn't a brand new idea then?
Definitely not new. But, a lot of the way we talk about it now, the actual terms we use, like multidisciplinarity, interdisciplinarity, and transdisciplinarity, a lot of that got cemented way back in 1970.
70? Wow.
Yeah, there was this big international conference in France backed by the OECD. It really set the stage, gave us this core vocabulary we're going to explore.
Okay, let's unpack this then, starting at the beginning. Multidisciplinarity.
Yeah.
What does that actually mean? Because I think a lot of people hear that and might assume it's, well, interdisciplinarity.
That's a really common assumption. But multidisciplinarity is simpler in a way. Think juxtaposition.
Juxtaposition, like placing things side by side.
Exactly. You place disciplines side by side, but they don't necessarily interact deeply. Imagine that community problem again, health, environment, economy.
Okay.
A multidisciplinary approach might bring in a doctor, an environmental scientist, an economist.
Well, right, the different experts.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
each one gives their separate take. Maybe they even present one after the other, like at a conference.
Like separate chapters in a book.
Perfect analogy. The disciplines themselves, they stay separate, their ideas keep their original shapes. And the basic way we structure knowledge isn't really questioned.
Ah, okay, so it's more like parallel play, not really active teamwork.
That's a great way to put it. Our sources even call it a weak or sometimes false form of interdisciplinarity.
Why false?
Because it often lacks that genuine back and forth, that real integration of ideas.
Can you give us some quick examples? Where might we see this kind of side-by-side approach?
Sure. Think of a general education program at a university. Lots of different disciplinary courses, right?
Yeah.
A multidisciplinary melange, as Klein calls it.
The mix, yeah.
Or even big journals like Science or Nature. They put articles from totally different fields next to each other. Useful, definitely. But the articles aren't changing each other.
Okay.
Another trap is thinking that just because different fields use the same tool, like a math model or a computer simulation.
That makes it interdisciplinary.
Right. But it's often just a shared tool. It doesn't mean the thinking across the fields has actually merged or changed. The key is it brings different views together, but usually without that deep blending.
That makes the difference really clear.
Okay.
Okay, so if that's juxtaposition, what happens when we cross the line, when we get into actual interdisciplinarity? What's the big shift?
The big shift is that integration and interaction become proactive. It's deliberate.
Proactive.
Meaning, instead of just lining things up, interdisciplinary work actively tries to focus and blend concepts from different fields. It tries to build new structures, new ways of thinking, to answer questions that don't belong to just one discipline.
So back to our community example.
Right. The doctor, the environmental scientist, the economist, they wouldn't just report separately. They'd actively work together.
How so?
They might try to figure out how, say, local pollution, the environmental piece, is making certain illnesses worse, the health piece, which then affects people's ability to... the economic piece.
Ah, connecting the dots across the field.
Exactly. They're reshaping their own approaches to get a more holistic picture of that interconnected problem.
So interdisciplinarity is really about Finding those links, building a bigger, more integrated understanding. Is it just one thing, or are there different flavors?
Oh, it definitely exists on a spectrum. You can have what's called narrow interdisciplinarity.
Tarot.
Yeah, between fields that are already quite similar, maybe in methods or outlook, like history and literature. The blending can feel pretty natural there.
Makes sense.
But then you've got broad or wide interdisciplinarity.
And that involves...
That's bridging fields with much less in common, maybe even radically different ways of knowing. Think sciences and humanities trying to work together.
That sounds much harder.
It is harder. But the potential payoff, the new insights you might get, can be huge. And, people often equate interdisciplinarity with collaboration.
Which sounds right.
It often does involve teamwork, absolutely. But the sources are clear. There are different degrees of collaboration involved. It's not all or nothing.
Okay, that's an important point. What are these different degrees then? How does the collaboration vary?
Well, we can talk about shared ID versus cooperative ID.
Shared versus cooperative.
Okay. In shared interdisciplinarity, you might have different teams working on different parts of a big problem. They use complementary skills, they talk, share results, check progress.
But maybe they aren't in the same room every day.
Exactly. They share information, but they might still work quite independently on their piece.
Got it. And cooperative ID.
That requires deep, intensive teamwork. The classic example is the Manhattan Project.
Right, building the atomic bomb.
Yeah. You had physicists, chemists, engineers, mathematicians, all working together day in, day out. They weren't just sharing reports. They were actively integrating their expertise constantly to solve incredibly complex shared problems.
So it's a scale, really.
It is. From just giving some background info to discussing findings to actually defining the problem together and, at the highest level, really integrating everyone's perspective into the whole research design.
Okay, let's dig even deeper into the types of interdisciplinarity. We've talked about collaboration levels, but what about methodological ID? Borrowing method sounds interesting. How does that work?
Right. Methodological interdisciplinarity is often driven by a pretty practical goal. Improve your results.
How?
By borrowing a specific method or maybe a concept from a totally different field. You use it to test your hypothesis, answer your question, maybe develop a theory in your own field.
So like a science is borrowing a statistical method.
Exactly. And this borrowing can happen in different ways. It might start small, just an auxiliary borrow, doesn't really change how you normally work.
Just adding a little something.
Yeah. But sometimes that borrowing becomes much more sophisticated, more central. It becomes supplementary. The field develops a real dependence on that borrowed method.
Like what?
Think about psychological testing in education. It came from psychology, but it's become deeply embedded, essential in pedagogy.
Ah, I see. It's not just an add-on anymore.
Right. And then sometimes the borrowing is so fundamental it becomes structural.
Structural.
The borrowed method or concept actually becomes the basis for a whole new field, like cybernetics or electromagnetics. These emerge from integrating approaches from different sciences. Statistics itself, oral history, econometrics. These are specialties built on specific methodologies.
Wow, so a method can literally create a new discipline. That's powerful.
It really is. It shows how a new way of doing research can completely change the game.
And our sources mention examples in the social sciences too, right? Raymond Miller talked about shared components, like statistics.
Yes, things used across fields, and also cross-cutting organizing principles.
Like role or exchange.
Exactly, concepts that help structure thinking in multiple disciplines. And after World War II, there was this explosion of borrowing cybernetics, game theory.
And a mix of quantitative and qualitative methods.
Yeah, a third methodological movement.
Yeah.
But what's really fascinating, as you said, is that it wasn't just science influencing social science. The humanities played a huge role, too.
How so?
Well, Clifford Geertz pointed this out back in 1980. He saw social scientists moving away from trying to explain everything like a physical system, like clockwork.
Okay.
Towards what? Towards models based on interpretation, looking at specific cases. And they started borrowing analogies, symbolic forms from the humanities.
Like seeing society as a game or a play.
Precisely. Or even as a text to be read and interpreted. And Meek Ball's idea of traveling concepts captures this beautifully.
Traveling concepts.
Yeah, ideas like image or performance. They travel between disciplines, art history, literary studies, anthropology.
And they change meaning as they travel.
They do. Their meaning and use shift, but the key thing is they create common ground for discussion. They spark new connections and ideas across fields that might otherwise stay separate.
That's a great image. Ideas traveling and connecting things. Okay, so We've done methods, borrowed concepts. Now for the really big picture stuff. Theoretical ID. This sounds like it gets right to the core of how we understand things.
It absolutely does. Theoretical interdisciplinarity is about building bigger mental models, new conceptual frameworks.
Going beyond specific methods or analogies.
Yes, aiming for a more comprehensive, general view. Sometimes it even involves changing our fundamental understanding of knowledge itself, our epistemology.
So what does that look like in practice?
Well, outcomes could be integrating ideas from different disciplines to create a totally new theory, or developing broad syntheses based on finding deep connections, maybe between models or analogies across fields.
That means
Maybe understanding something like how chronic stress affects heart health. You need to integrate psychological theories of stress with medical and biological understandings of the heart and body systems.
creating a new overarching theory from those pieces.
Exactly. And the sources suggest there are higher levels here, too, sometimes called generalizing ID, where one big theoretical perspective gets applied really broadly, like systems theory or complexity theory.
Using one lens to look at many different things.
Right. And then there's integrated ID, which Lisa Latuca calls the true or full form.
True or full?
Yeah, where concepts from one field genuinely contribute to solving problems or building theories in another field. Think of computational neuroscience concepts from computer science deeply shaping how we theorize about the brain. It often involves a critique of how disciplines usually understand things.
So it's about creating genuinely new ways of seeing the whole picture.
Seeing the whole forest, yeah, not just the individual trees.
Which leads us neatly into two powerful metaphors the sources use. Bridge building versus restructuring. One sounds like connecting things, the other like rebuilding them.
That's a perfect way to put it. Bridge building is when you have two sort of established, solid disciplines.
Like two towns on either side of a river.
Exactly. And you build a bridge between them. A new hybrid field forms, like social psychology connecting sociology and psychology.
Okay, a new connection.
But the original towns, the traditional disciplines and academic structures, they mostly stay as they were. The basic map remains intact.
Got it. So what's restructuring that?
Restructuring is more radical. It doesn't just connect existing things. It takes parts from several disciplines and reassembles them into a new, coherent whole.
Like taking bricks from several old buildings to make a completely new one?
Yes. And in doing so, it actively questions the old boundaries, the traditional categories. It really blurs the lines.
Examples of that.
The whole behavioral science movement was a major restructuring. And think about the creation of genuinely integrated social science courses, or even whole departments they were trying to rebuild how we study society.
And this is how new interdisciplinary fields often emerge.
Absolutely. It's a major way new domains form. Our sources point to fields arising from specific topics, like gerontology, the study of aging, or from life experience, like ethnic studies or women's studies looking at specific social groups, or hybrids, like we mentioned, social psychology, economic history, and even fields focused on professional preparation, like social work or nursing, which draw on many areas.
And these fields are constantly evolving, changing the map.
Constantly. The National Research Council even recommended updating official taxonomies to include newer fields like global area studies, nanoscience, bioinformatics.
And you mentioned renaming biology to life sciences.
Exactly, to reflect how much that whole domain has expanded and changed character. It's a dynamic landscape.
Is it true then that, quote, the interdiscipline of today is the discipline of tomorrow? Does it always work like that?
That's a common saying, but the sources say it's a bit of a myth, or at least it's not automatic.
Why not?
Well, trajectories vary a lot. Some interdisciplinary areas become established disciplines, yes, but others might fade or stay in a more hybrid state. And things like funding, social influence, economic, and social capital play a huge role.
Money matters.
It really does. Think about how Ford Foundation funding boosted area studies after the war.
Yeah.
Or how molecular biology got massive resources compared to, say, social psychology sometimes. These external factors really shape which fields thrive and become disciplines.
That makes sense. It's not just about the ideas themselves. Which brings us to another key distinction in motivation. You mentioned instrumental ID versus critical ID. Is one more about practical goals and the other about challenging things?
That's the core of it, yes. Instrumental ID is very pragmatic, very goal-oriented. It often serves the immediate needs of an existing discipline, like borrowing a method to get better results, as we discussed.
Okay.
Or, increasingly today, it serves external demands, market needs, national priorities. Think biotech, biomedicine, high-tech industries needing solutions fast.
Driven by competition or profit?
Often, yes. Peter Weingart calls this strategic or opportunistic ID. It's focused on achieving a specific, often external, objective.
Right. So how does critical ID differ?
Critical ID takes a fundamentally different stance. Its goal isn't just to use the existing system, but to question it, to interrogate the dominant structures of knowledge and education.
With the aim of changing them.
Exactly, transforming them. It deliberately raises questions about values, about purpose, things that instrumental ID might ignore or take for granted.
Where do we see this?
Many of those fields born from life experience ethnic studies, women's studies often started with a strong critical drive. They weren't just adding new topics, they were challenging who gets to define knowledge and how.
Deconstructing the boundaries.
Precisely. A churn in the system, as Salter and Hearn put it, challenging assumptions about what belongs where, what's central, what's peripheral.
But can these two coexist? Can research be both critical and problem-solving?
Oh, absolutely. The distinction isn't always rigid. Think about research on complex issues like environmental sustainability or public health.
Yeah.
It often combines a critique of existing systems, maybe how inequality affects health outcomes, with very practical problem-solving goals. But the underlying motivation can still lean more one way or the other. Is the main goal a pragmatic fix or a deeper systemic change?
Got it. Okay, finally, let's look at the frontier, transdisciplinarity. Our sources say this is really picking up steam now. What does this actually mean? Is it going even further than interdisciplinarity?
In many ways, yes. Transdisciplinarity, or TD, aims for something even more ambitious. The original OECD idea was about finding a common system of axioms.
Axioms, like fundamental principles.
Exactly. A framework that actually transcends the narrow viewpoints of individual disciplines. Something that creates a kind of interlanguage to talk across all of them.
Wow, like a universal translator for knowledge?
Sort of. Figures like Jean Piaget saw it as a higher stage in how knowledge evolves. Eric Jansch even gave it a strong social purpose, using this transcendent view to drive science, education, innovation for society's benefit. It's not just about blending disciplines, but potentially creating a whole new level above them.
Okay, that's a big idea. And you said it's gaining momentum. The sources identify 4 main trends.
That's right, 4 key trend lines showing where TD is active today. The first one connects back to history.
How so?
It's this long-standing historical quest for a unified, systematic understanding of all knowledge. From ancient Greek philosophers right up to someone like E.O. Wilson and his idea of consilience.
The unity of knowledge.
Exactly. But the modern view is that this unity doesn't just happen. You have to actively work for it through critical reflection while still respecting diversity.
Okay, that's trend 1. What's the second?
The second is critical and transgressive TD. This echoes critical interdisciplinarity, but maybe pushes it further.
Pushing boundaries again?
Yes, using TD as a label for ways of knowing that actively challenge the status quo, the established canons of wholeness. It questions categories like class, gender, race, particularly in fields like cultural studies or gender studies, often with a strong focus on sociopolitical justice.
So challenging the very foundations. And the third trend line.
The third involves creating those overarching synthetic paradigms we touched on. This is close to the original OECD idea, developing broad conceptual frameworks that go beyond any single discipline.
Like systems theory.
Exactly, or complexity theory, maybe Marxism in the past. More recently, you see terms like transdisciplinary science being used for huge research areas like cancer.
How does that work in cancer research?
It means building new frameworks that don't just look at the biology, but integrate social, economic, political, environmental factors, all of it, to get a truly holistic view of health, disease, and well-being.
That makes sense for something so complex. Okay, and the fourth trend, you said this one was maybe the most fascinating.
I think so. It's called transsector TD problem solving. And its core idea is a radical shift in perspective.
Which is?
That the starting point for research shouldn't be the academic disciplines. It should be the actual problems people face in the real world, in life world, the Lebenswelt.
Wow. So flip the whole thing around. Don't fit the problem to the discipline.
Yeah.
Fit the research to the problem.
Exactly. Let the real world challenges dictate the questions and the methods.
How does that play out?
Well, it leads to collaborations not just between academics, but between academics and, say, industry for developing new products. Or, maybe even more importantly,
Yeah.
collaborations between academic experts and ordinary citizens, community groups, people contributing their local knowledge, their lived
To
experience.
solve problems together,
Yeah,
like sustainability or siting a nuclear plant.
precisely. Working towards democratic solutions for really contentious issues, this connects directly to the idea of Mode 2 knowledge production.
Mode 2, what's that?
It's a concept arguing that we're seeing a shift in how knowledge gets made. Mode 1 is the traditional university-based disciplinary model. Mode 2 is characterized by happening in the context of application, being transdisciplinary, involving diverse groups.
More players involved, focused on real-world problems.
Yes, and the goal shifts too. It's not just about producing reliable scientific knowledge, it's about producing socially robust knowledge.
Socially robust, meaning
Meaning knowledge that works in the real world, that's accepted and usable by society, because public debate, lay perspective, local context have been incorporated right from the start. It breaks down that old wall between the expert and the layperson.
that sounds like a really different way of doing science or research.
It is. It relates to ideas like post-normal science, too. Approaches needed for problems that are super complex, where the facts are uncertain, values are disputed, and the stakes are high. Think climate change policy. Traditional science alone can't give you the answer.
Okay, so putting this all together, what does it mean for us today, practically? The sources end with new implications for old taxonomy. Sounds like the rules are changing.
They really are. The National Academies of Science pinpointed 4 main things driving all this interdisciplinarity today.
What are they?
1, the sheer complexity of nature and society. We just can't understand big systems through one lens anymore.
Makes sense. 2,
2, this growing desire to explore questions and problems that simply don't fit into neat disciplinary boxes, that's intensified.
people are seeing the connections more.
Right. 3, the need to solve urgent societal problems, also intensified. And there's a shift here. Problems arising from the community, exogenous ID, are often getting priority over problems arising purely within science, endogenous ID.
Needs driving research. And number 4,
Number 4 is the power of new technologies. This is maybe the newest catalyst, like MRI scans letting us map the brain while studying behavior, linking psychology and neuroscience in totally new ways, or massive computing power allowing scientists to share and analyze huge data sets across any boundary.
so tech is enabling it.
Enabling it, yes, but also driving it. This is fascinating. Alan Leshner, writing in Science, argued that sometimes new technologies are driving scientific advances as much as the other way around.
So the tool shapes the science.
Exactly. It's not just letting us do old things better. It's actually shaping new approaches, posing entirely new kinds of questions we couldn't even ask before.
That's a powerful thought. Tech isn't just a tool, it's a force changing how we think. It fits with that quote you mentioned from Norm Burkhardt.
Ah, yes, about physics and chemistry.
Yeah, how 30 years ago the difference was obvious, but now chemists are doing quantum-level studies, just like physicists. He said, there's almost no difference.
That perfectly illustrates the blurring.
It really does.
And that observation kind of sums up the whole point. All these boundary crossings we've talked about, they really challenge our old ideas about what a discipline even is.
The categories are breaking down.
The rules of taxonomy have changed, as Klein puts it. We're seeing this explosion of interdisciplinarity driven by new ways of integrating, collaborating, handling complexity, critiquing old ways, and solving real-world problems. It's a fundamental evolution in knowledge itself.
Wow. Okay, what a journey that was. From disciplines just, sitting next to each other,
It's disciplinarity.
all the way through active blending, deep collaboration, challenging the system,
Interdisciplinarity in its various forms, critical ID.
and finally, transcending those boundaries altogether with transdisciplinarity to tackle real-world stuff.
Right, aiming for that holistic view, that socially robust knowledge.
Understanding this whole evolution, this taxonomy, it really isn't just academic, is it? It genuinely helps you, the listener, navigate this incredibly complex world.
Absolutely. Whether it's for your work, your studies, or even just making sense of the news, you start to see the patterns.
You see how knowledge connects, or where the gaps are.
And perhaps this ongoing evolution leaves us with a challenge. It pushes us to ask not just what we know.
But how we know it.
Exactly. And whether our old ways of carving up knowledge are really fit for purpose anymore. Do they help us get the deep, holistic understanding we need for the problems we face today?
That's a great question to ponder. Maybe the final thought for you is, what unexpected connections could you find if you started looking across those traditional boundaries in your own life or work?
What new insights might be waiting just over that disciplinary fence?
Keep that question in mind. And keep an eye out for these different ways knowledge interacts. Once you start looking seriously, you'll see them everywhere.